McQueen watched the stuntman adjusting his leather jacket. Bud Ekins looked professional, competent, ready to execute the jump that would define the entire escape sequence. Then McQueen turned to director John Sturges, those ice-blue eyes carrying the weight of absolute determination. "The jump is mine, John, or the movie is over." The Bavarian mountainside went completely silent, except for the Triumph's rhythmic idle. If you respect the real Steve McQueen, subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy. September 1962. Bavaria, West Germany. Mountainous terrain 50 miles southeast of Munich, where rolling hills met barbed wire fences that looked exactly like the ones that had contained Allied prisoners 20 years earlier. The Great Escape production had been shooting for 8 weeks, in conditions that tested every aspect of filmmaking logistics. Morning mist clung to valley floors that would soon witness the most dangerous motorcycle sequence ever attempted for a Hollywood production. Temperature climbing towards 65 degrees under overcast skies that provided perfect lighting but made distance judgment treacherous for high-speed motorcycle work. Steve McQueen, 32 years old, restless energy wrapped in authentic military prisoner clothing that somehow looked more natural on him than on actors who'd spent months in costume fittings. Captain Virgil Hiltz, the Cooler King, the motorcycle-riding American pilot whose escape attempts had become legendary. John Sturges, 54 years old, 25 years of directing experience that had taught him the difference between calculated risk and suicidal recklessness. Professional reputation built on big-budget spectacles delivered through careful planning and meticulous execution. Bud Ekins, 32 years old, professional stuntman, whose motorcycle expertise had earned respect from every action director in Hollywood. McQueen's friend and riding partner, who understood the technical requirements for surviving dangerous jumps. 3 different approaches to the same dangerous necessity meeting on terrain that offered no second chances. The Triumph TR6 Trophy 650 sat 30 yards from the fence line, engine warmed and ready for the sequence that would either establish motorcycle chase scenes as cinematic art or end several careers through catastrophic failure. British engineering designed for reliability. 650cc parallel twin engine producing 42 horsepower. Enough power to clear 12 feet if everything worked perfectly. Sturges held a surveyor's viewfinder, measuring angles and distances with the precision of an engineer calculating structural loads. 12 feet of barbed wire fence. 15-foot approach run. Landing zone that provided adequate clearance if the jump trajectory was perfect and inadequate survival space if it wasn't. "Bud, you're comfortable with this setup?" Sturges asked, studying the stuntman who'd successfully completed similar jumps under controlled conditions, but never with cameras rolling and studio executives watching every detail through telephoto lenses. "Yes, sir. I've cleared higher fences on longer runs. This is within normal parameters for the bike and rider combination." "Weather conditions acceptable?" "Visibility is good. Wind is minimal. Ground conditions are stable. Everything looks green for the sequence." McQueen had been silent for 10 minutes, studying the fence line, with the focused attention of someone calculating variables that other people were ignoring. Distance. Speed. Trajectory. Landing impact. Not from a stuntman's perspective, but from a rider's perspective. Someone who understood motorcycles as extensions of personal will rather than mechanical equipment operated by professional technicians. "John, can I talk to you for a minute?" McQueen said, his voice carrying the controlled intensity that directors had learned to take seriously. They walked away from the crew setup. Close enough to see the fence, but far enough for private conversation about decisions that would affect the entire production schedule and budget allocation. "Steve, I know what you're thinking, but this jump requires professional stunt expertise. Bud has the experience and insurance coverage. You have the star value that we can't risk." "John, this isn't about insurance coverage. Then what is it about?" McQueen looked back at the Triumph idling near the fence line. "It's about authenticity. About making the audience believe that Captain Hiltz would actually attempt this escape." Sturges had directed enough action sequences to understand the psychological difference between stunt work and star performance. but he'd also produced enough films to understand the financial consequences of star injuries. Steve, the audience will believe the performance whether you or Bud makes the jump. Camera angles will establish your character's participation without requiring you to actually clear 12 feet of fence. Will they believe it? Of course. That's what movie magic accomplishes. McQueen was quiet for a moment. John, you know what separates good performances from great ones? Professional technique and authentic emotion. No great performances happen when the actor is actually experiencing what the character experiences. Not pretending. Actually living it. Sturges understood that this conversation was heading toward a confrontation that could affect the entire production. McQueen wasn't discussing acting technique. He was stating requirements for his continued participation. Steve, are you saying you won't perform the scene unless you personally make the jump? I'm saying that Captain Hiltz wouldn't let someone else make his escape attempt for him. And if I'm playing Captain Hiltz, then I don't let someone else make his escape attempt either. But you're not Captain Hiltz. You're Steve McQueen playing Captain Hiltz. And Steve McQueen has contractual obligations that Captain Hiltz doesn't have. Maybe Steve McQueen's contractual obligations include delivering authentic performance that honors the character and the story. And maybe authentic performance requires taking the same risks the character takes. They walked back toward the motorcycle setup. Bud Ekins was adjusting his helmet and checking equipment with professional thoroughness that came from years of understanding that stunt work required systematic preparation to prevent systematic failure. Bud, give us a minute, Sturges said. The stuntman stepped away from the Triumph, understanding that creative decisions were being made that might affect his participation in the sequence. McQueen approached the motorcycle with the natural familiarity of someone who'd spent more time on two wheels than most professional riders. Placed his hands on the handlebars, felt the vibration from the idling engine, studied the fence line with renewed focus. John, look at this setup. Really look at it. I'm looking. What do you see? I see a dangerous motorcycle jump that requires professional stunt coordination to execute safely. I see the most important scene in the movie, the moment when Captain Hiltz chooses freedom over safety, the moment when he commits everything to escape or death. The moment when the audience decides whether they believe in this character or not. Sturges was listening now, really listening. Understanding that McQueen was describing the scene from a perspective that went beyond technical execution to emotional authenticity. And you believe the audience can tell the difference between you making the jump and Bud making the jump? I believe the audience can tell the difference between performance and commitment, and this jump is about commitment. McQueen swung his leg over the Triumph, settled into riding position, gripped the handlebars with natural authority that suggested years of experience with machines that required complete trust between rider and equipment. John, you know what I learned racing motorcycles? What's that? I learned that you can't fake confidence at high speed. Either you're committed or you're not. And if you're not completely committed, the machine knows. And the audience knows. The engine note changed slightly as McQueen adjusted the throttle, not revving for performance, just testing the response characteristics that would determine whether the jump was successful or catastrophic. Steve, even if you're committed to making the jump personally, I'm not committed to letting you risk production completion on a stunt that could end your career. John, if I don't make this jump, there won't be a career worth protecting. That's not true. It is true, because if I let someone else take the risks that define my character, then I'm not playing the character. I'm just wearing his costume. Sturges looked at the fence line. 12 feet of barbed wire that represented the difference between freedom and captivity. 12 feet that also represented the difference between authentic performance and manufactured entertainment. Steve, what if you get hurt? What if the jump goes wrong and you're injured seriously enough to stop production? Then the movie ends with Captain Hiltz attempting escape, which is better than the movie ending with Captain Hiltz letting someone else attempt his escape for him. McQueen revved the engine once. Brief acceleration that demonstrated the Triumph's power characteristics and his own familiarity with extracting maximum performance from mechanical systems. John, here's what I know about this business. Audiences can tell when actors are taking real risks. They can feel the difference between genuine danger and manufactured suspense. And this scene only works if they believe Captain Hiltz is risking everything for freedom. And you can't convince them of that without actually risking everything? I can convince them that Captain Hiltz would risk everything, but I can't convince them that he did risk everything unless I actually do. Sturges walked to the fence line, measured the height with his own eyes rather than technical equipment. 12 feet of wire barrier constructed to exact specifications. Steve, if I let you make this jump and something goes wrong, I'm responsible for the consequences. And if you don't let me make this jump and the scene doesn't work, you're responsible for those consequences too. The scene will work with professional stunt coordination. Maybe, or maybe it will look like professional stunt coordination instead of desperate escape. McQueen looked directly at Sturges with those pale blue eyes that had already made him famous for intensity that couldn't be manufactured through acting technique. John, you hired me to play Captain Hiltz, not to play Steve McQueen pretending to be Captain Hiltz. What's the difference? The difference is that Captain Hiltz makes his own escape attempts. He doesn't delegate them to other people and then take credit for their courage. Sturges understood. This wasn't about stunt work or insurance concerns or production logistics. This was about McQueen's personal code of authenticity that didn't distinguish between character requirements and performer obligations. Steve, are you saying that playing this character requires you to actually be this character? I'm saying that playing this character honestly requires me to face the same choices he faces, between safety and freedom. Between letting other people take risks and taking risks himself. Bud Ekins approached cautiously. Professional stuntman who understood that creative decisions were affecting his employment. Steve, Mr. Sturges, I'm ready to execute the jump whenever you're ready. McQueen looked at the stuntman who'd been prepared to risk injury so that Steve McQueen could maintain star safety while delivering star performance. Bud, you're a hell of a rider, really. Professional expertise that I respect completely. Thank you. But Captain Hiltz doesn't let someone else take his risks. McQueen turned back to Sturges. John, here's my position. Either I make the jump as Steve McQueen playing Captain Hiltz, or there's no jump because there's no movie worth finishing. You're giving me an ultimatum? I'm telling you the requirements for authentic performance. Captain Hiltz escapes on his own, or he doesn't escape at all. Sturges looked at the production crew assembled around expensive cameras and lighting equipment that represented months of preparation. All dependent on creative decisions made by actors who approached their craft with personal codes that sometimes conflicted with business considerations. Steve, if I agree to let you make the jump, you accept full responsibility for the consequences. I accept full responsibility for the performance, which includes accepting full responsibility for the risks. And if something goes wrong, then something goes wrong while I'm doing my job. Sturges walked back to the camera position, conferred briefly with his cinematographer about angles and timing that would capture the motorcycle sequence with maximum impact. When he returned, McQueen was still seated on the Triumph, engine idling, eyes focused on the fence line that represented the boundary between captivity and freedom. All right, Steve, your jump, your responsibility. Thank you. But if you get killed, I'm going to be very disappointed. McQueen smiled for the first time that morning. John, if I get killed, you'll have the most authentic death scene in cinema history. The crew reset for the sequence that would either establish motorcycle chases as cinematic art or end Steve McQueen's career through miscalculation. Steve McQueen watched the stuntman and told John Sturges the jump is mine, or the movie is over. Subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy for stories they never told you.